Too bright. This year I made a fair share of poor financial decisions. I decided that I was ready to kind of break the seal on this RT and really start to set it apart from the stock ones. I was starting to get bored of having a pretty much stock car that, you know, was reasonably fast, but, you know, obviously got bullied on the streets, and I decided, we're gonna take it to the next level. 2020 was a big year for this car. A lot of things happened to it, a lot of new mods, a lot of new people have joined me on the YouTube journey stuff. I'm going to treat this video as kind of a recap of everything that's been done to this car the year of 2020. So when I got this car back in 2016, I pretty much went a year with it before actually doing anything to it. Really, I think the only thing that happened in the first year was like a cold air intake, and then not these taillight tints, but the other Lux taillight tints that kind of cover only the backup rear lights. Of course, the tints aren't really performance mods though, so I'm going to focus on performance mods in this video, mostly because, well, who really cares about window tint and stuff? So between 2016 and late 2019, I had only done a couple of mods to this car, the big ones being shorty headers, 309 differential, and I got the PCM unlocked and I was running a 91 octane Diablo tune. Obviously those things made the car a lot peppier, they made the car a lot fun to drive, and that's pretty much the limit of what most people would do with this car, and that's a pretty reasonable limit. After that it pretty much turns into a money pit. It arguably turns into a money pit before that too. I decided to keep going on my bad decision streak. In January of 2020, I decided to replace the shorty headers on this car with a set of JBA long tube headers. So in addition to sounding a little bit more aggressive, the headers are also better for top end than the shorty headers, at least on these newer engines. I've heard some conflicting information on that in the past, but evidence shows on these ones that the long tubes help a little bit more with top end, which, as you guys know, these cars lack a lot. Then I finally decided to get the car custom tuned. I went with an email tune through Sean from Hemi Fever. You guys saw me do a review on that in the past. That was definitely worth the $200-ish I paid for it. The best thing about those email tunes, in my opinion, is the trans tunes. You're gonna mostly feel the difference from the transmission tune, which makes the car feel a lot peppier, a lot more stiff in shifts, and, you know, things like that. Sorry if I keep squinting, by the way. The sun is at the perfect position in the sky to where I can't see anything in front of me. Next was the project that I get the most amount of questions about. Actually, I think this morning I woke up to 4 DMs on Instagram about it, and that was actually the 392 Intake Manifold swap. You guys know that mod's good for mid-range power. I've said that a million times. That's not a top of the RPM power baker. It's mostly for throttle response down low, and you gain like 30 foot-pounds in the mid-range, whatever. After I did the 392 Intake Manifold, I kind of stopped to think, am I gonna stop with this car? Because at that point, I had pretty much done everything bolt-on wise that I could have done before tearing open the motor or adding boost to the car. To be kind of honest with you, I was kind of bored with the car. I know in late 2019 I went to go look at scat packs and stuff. In my opinion, the scat pack wasn't a big enough difference to justify the amount of money that I would have lost trading in this car, and I wouldn't have had any negative equity, but all the money that had been paid on the car would have just basically disappeared, which people don't think about, but which is kind of what led me to my next decision, which was to cam this car.
There you go.
Now you can probably take that bolt out.
Now you can, yeah. Okay.
That is not the cam. You still gotta go put your fingers in to get the rest of the camera.
Before I get into the power numbers with the cam, I want to mention that I got this car dynoed out at a place in Westminster when it was full bolt-on with the Hemi Fever tune. So the car put down around 372 horsepower and just over 400 foot-pounds of torque. What I do want to mention is those are STD, so standard correction numbers. The reason I mention this is because out at Full-Blown Performance, their dyno correction factor is SAE, which actually tends to read a little bit lower. From my experience, at this power level, it seems to read about between 10 and 20 horsepower lower than the STD correction factor. So when I put the cam in, I had this car email tuned. And if you guys were familiar with the struggle that I went through when I had this car email tuned. It just wasn't running properly. The car would die at every light, terrible surging, blah, 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 whatever. I was very grateful to get an appointment over at Fullblown Performance, who they took care of me. Got this car in. They did a baseline run before they had touched the tune or anything with my email tune, and the car put down almost exactly 400 horsepower and 385-ish foot-pounds of torque, SAE corrected. Sounds healthy. So once again, I want to mention those SAE numbers read lower than the STD correction factor. Of course, the issue here is that I was comparing two different dynos, which the dynos may be calibrated differently, but let's assume that they read the same. So since the full-blown one was SAE correction factor, let's add 10 to 400 and call it 410 horsepower. I basically would have only gained 38 horsepower from the cam, and I probably would have lost torque. Obviously, there was something wrong with the tune. I remember looking at the air-fuel ratio and the torque curve on the email tune. It was just so bad. Thankfully, they took care of that at Full-Blown Performance.
Power. Gotta clean up the fuel and picking up power.
Picked up 10 from that last run. Of course, while I was there, I went ahead and converted this car to E85. Pretty much only needed Hellcat injectors since the tune is only for E85. This is not a flex fuel car. I can't put 91 octane back in it. They were able to gain a pretty significant amount of power by doing that. And in addition, the car drove a lot better. Now, before I talk about power numbers there, I'm going to talk about the last thing I did this year, which was lowering springs. That was probably the most requested mod. People were all over my case about lowering this car. It sat pretty high on the stock suspension. It was a blacktop package, so I'm pretty sure it had the base model suspension. And for whatever reason, I feel like my car just sat higher than everyone else's. Springs took care of that. It rides about the same, and it's a lot lower, or at least a good amount lower, and very happy with that so far. Now back to the power numbers. The last number that I released to you guys on YouTube, I think, was around 425 horsepower, and I think around 425 foot-pounds of torque. The final number that the car put down on the dyno at Full-Blown Performance was... Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This car turned into a money pit really fast. I try not to look at the money though, because a lot of it has been a learning experience. I got to spend a lot of time with my family, something I value more than just the money that I put into the car. So I try to look at it from that perspective. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, please remember to click that subscribe button below. 2021, if it goes as I plan, which it rarely ever does, but let's cross our fingers that it does. This car is going to be significantly faster than it is right now. I've talked to Alex over at Full-Blown Performance. He knows what I have going on in my head. The cogs are turning, and he's ready for it. So I just got to scrape the funds together, and we'll go from there. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.